the topic of our conversation is leading from where you are. And we've had a lot of good information provided by President Burst. Asa, I think, just knocked it out of the park as far as the goals for the cabinet and wanting to change our culture. But in this session, we're going to focus a little bit more on leadership and leading from where you are and how you can take that initiative. But the first thing that we're going to do is actually, everyone does have a piece of paper in front of them. Just to set the stage, I'm not a professional motivational speaker. I'm not a professional leadership. Like I said, my background's in environmental science. So I hope to be more of a facilitator, to engage conversation, to get everyone involved, and to get input from the wealth of knowledge and experience that's in this room. So before we get started, what I want to start with is everyone has a piece of paper in front of them. We're going to play a word association game. In front of you, it says Supervisor. 5 lines. For the next few minutes, couple minutes, and keep it folded. Give me 5 words or phrases that says what you think of or characteristics of a supervisor.
I gave my bag away.
Oh, no. I took the pens out. All these other people took pens.
I gave my bag away because we ran out.
It's painless.
I could scratch on it.
I'm sitting in the last session taking notes on my phone.
Yeah.
Because the bag was
That's
in
what
there.
I'm going to do, yeah.
Just word association. 5 things that come to mind. Not going to persuade the conversation. Okay, I see some eyes coming up, so I'm assuming that some are getting their 5 down. What I'd like for you to do now is turn your paper over and do the same thing for leader. 5 words or phrases that come to mind or characteristics when you think of leader. Appreciate the effort. What I'd like to do now is, like I said, I'd like to facilitate some discussion. Is anyone willing to share some of the words that they wrote, words or phrases that they wrote down for supervisor?
Watcher.
I'm sorry?
Watcher.
Watcher, okay. What else?
Delegated.
Delegator, good, okay. Okay.
It's evaluated, probably the same as watch. Maybe I'm not sure.
No, it can almost have two different roles. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of get a more negative connotation with
Yeah,
watcher
yeah,
as opposed to evaluator. Someone's going to, critique you. I think a watcher, they're just, watching, they know input. What else? Motivator? Perfect. Okay.
I put a follower, like you had next to following the policies and
Okay.
rules, so to speak.
Okay. So not necessarily following other people, but following procedures.
Yes.
Okay.
Hold accountable?
Hold accountable. What do you mean? They hold you accountable or you hold them accountable?
Yes.
Okay, accountability. We'll just put it in general terms on that. Because I think you should. You should hold your supervisors accountable, right? Okay, now what about leader? What are some of your words you think about leaders?
Not everyone say it at once.
Mentor.
Mentor, good. Okay. What else?
Integrity?
Good.
Knowledgeable.
Like innovative.
Okay. And I was doing this exercise with my girls because they're asking what have I been working on. Even my 8-year-old said respectful as a, as a leader. And I think that's pretty telling coming from a, 3rd grade student. So respectful there.
Visionary.
Visionary, that's a good one that hasn't been mentioned. Okay, anything else we want to add?
Inspire.
I'm sorry?
Inspire.
Inspired. Okay. Now what I'd like for you guys to do is actually take the list that you've created in front of you and open the page up. Sometimes we think as supervisors, as leaders, based on their title and based on their rank in the organization. Sometimes we think as leaders in a different role. But what I'd like to do, is there anyone willing to share if they have one that showed up on both sides? Did you have any of your word associations that showed up in both your category as far as leader and as far as supervisor? Now, I will say that this morning we had a very negative connotation for supervisors. Like, I drew a hard line here. I think I would draw just a dotted line. There is some, positive motivator. I don't think, in this, watcher, I did get a negative context evaluator. I don't think so. I got more of a feedback there. Accountability, talking about both to you and them. So I'm just going to draw, a dotted line. We're not going to draw the hard jagged line that we had earlier. In the cabinet, we have innate positions that are supervisors. And we're also going to talk about today, we're going to spend the majority of the conversation talking about leaders within the cabinet and how sometimes you can be a leader in spite of or in addition to your supervisory role. So we'll go ahead and, looking at defining both of them, if you look at them, just these are the words that, thankfully you guys spoke up, but supervisors use policies, procedures, milestones, but I think the key there is to push their associates as opposed to leaders who inspire to achieve the goals of the organization through actions and example. And one of the recent reports that I was reading, a study was conducted that determined that more than 80% of those identified by employees as having some genuine leadership are not in positions of formal authority. So if you think about that and relate it to the cabinet, think about the untapped talent pool that we have. If we have 80% of people that have leadership capability but aren't necessarily and may never be in a position of supervisory leadership. But as I said, today's class is more about talking, leading from where you are, which, as I mentioned earlier, my position within the cabinet is as an environmental coordinator. So my position within our district is never going to be one of supervisory responsibilities. Some say that's a good thing. I don't know. But I can be a leader as long as I work on it. This gets back to our point that leadership knows no boundaries. Regardless of your organizational chart, we're not going to worry about that. You need to focus on In today's world, leaders are determined more by their influence and not by the hierarchy. If you go back a couple generations, there was an innate respect, I want to say, to the hierarchical chain of command. In today's work environment, that is not as prevalent, especially not in our cabinet. There are, the keys to leadership today is more based on your influence. Not only influencing those around you, but also your influence and your personal choices that you make on your day-to-day basis. Influence in the form of vision, in the form of passion, and in the form of initiative to get the ball rolling. So, initiative is the next concept that we're going to talk about. But once again, as we go through these concepts, if you guys have something to add, if you have an example, I'd be more than willing to hear it. I want it to be, as I said, more of a facilitator as opposed to a lecture. So take the initiative. Initiative is the essence of self-leadership. Take control of your own destiny and ask yourself, what can I do to improve the situation? A couple years ago, how many were here for the reorg? Anyone go through the reorg? How many of you went through it and was a little less than happy as it was going? And that's not, this is from someone who just had to deal with the aftermath. I did not have to implement it. Part of that was I felt some lack of communication within the district. We had a change in leadership for one. It was also, I don't know if you guys remember, it was also the end of a retirement window. We lost a lot of people at the same time. So there was a lot of turnover and a lot of change. There wasn't a strong method of communication. And that led us to, within our specific section, a lot of negativity. Instead of asking what would we do in this situation where, well, if I was in charge, we wouldn't do it this way. Well, when I'm in charge, we wouldn't do it this way. Or if I was the boss. That led to a lot of negative reaction and a lot of negativity in our specific section, to the point where it was what we called time sucking. We spent more time talking about that than we actually did problems. And that became our phrase, we were time sucking. And it wasn't just within our section, it was, I would say I say second floor, that's our development, but also, across all the floors. The thing that you have to think about is how is that impacting your performance? Like we said, it's a negativity, it's a time suck. Stop thinking about if you only had the right opportunity and take the opportunity, what would you do now? And own it. Attitude reflects leadership. The negative thoughts and actions that were going on was not conducive to anything. It wasn't conducive to a good work environment. People were frustrated just even coming in the door. We got to the point where we stopped, and it took an intentional change in our mindset. We stopped going from if I were in charge to start saying when, and bouncing ideas off of each other. And the main thing was to eliminate the pity parties. And this sign, this is the sign for our administrative assistant looking out in the designer. So we're all right here. It just miraculously appeared. No one knew where it came from. But it talks about the pity party leaving the station. That suck it up cupcake. We're not going to deal with this anymore. And it's quite explicit. But it showed up and it made us all realize, just the realization that, okay, this is ridiculous. We have absolutely no control over this. It took a personal pep talk for each of us individually, but also as a group. And we took that initiative and did away with the negative energy and started focusing on things that we could actually control. And start thinking about, earlier we were talking about, things you learn from mistakes or you learn from others before you. This was an opportunity for us to learn from that. The next thing I want to talk about is meaning. You have the initiative, you've decided you want to be a leader, you want to take that responsibility on. But I think in order to be able to advance your personal interests, you have to find what inspires you. You have to find out what your passions are. And sometimes you have the opportunity to think outside of just your professional box. Think about personally what makes you happy. See if there's a way that you can relate that or tie that back into the work that you're doing for the cabinet. One of the ladies, an example of this, one of the ladies I work with, her passion is mission work. Absolutely mission work. She averages 3 to 4 a year, a summer. She works her tail end off when she is here working for us, knowing that she has that flexibility in her work. that flexibility that allows her to she has a 2-week one coming up for Honduras. So that inspires her, and it is a mirror of her work when she's here. You know, she has been able to appreciate the flexibility that her working for the cabinet provides, works with her supervisor, makes them aware of it, and absolutely loves it. For me personally, you know, I said that I worked for the transportation cabinet for 10 years. Obviously had a life before that. I used to be a watershed coordinator out in Indiana, a small town, as partnership for Turtle Creek. I was able to go out and do a lot of outreach and education. As part of that job, outreach and education to elementary school kids. In my role, I get to deal with the public meetings. You guys all know those probably aren't always the best circumstances, but I'm a firm believer that kids say the darndest things. So getting out and interacting with kids, love it. Have 2 daughters of my own, and getting them acclimated or able to experience the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math has always been something that I enjoy. And I know my youngest one, they've actually taken science labs out of their class. So for me, this was something I was passionate about. And I don't know if anyone here involved in Keen? Keen? Done Keen presentations before. That was one of the things that was actually missing in the Keen program. There was a direct tie to what I liked. You know, Keen was always done by engineers, but recently, kind of things fall into place. We actually had to start doing public outreach and education as part of our minimum control measures for the MS4 requirements, as part of our stormwater requirements. So I was able to kind of piggyback on some of the people that I work with, become involved in the Keen presentations, and go out to the schools and present. We developed multiple different actually presentations, but one of them was actually using the same Enviroscape model that I used back at my Turtle Creek days. So find what makes you happy. And I'd work with my supervisor. At first he was like, no, wait a minute, you're not an engineer, how's this gonna work out? But relating it back to the goal, going out, Kentucky Engineering Exposure Network, focusing on the STEMs, the arts, the science, technology, engineering, and math. And being able to get that, and to me, honestly, it was fun. I went back out, we went out and did 8 presentations the first year. It was fun. And while I was out doing that, I was able to re-energize, you know? There's something about that to say, I enjoy doing my work, this is what I do, and you're relating it to the younger kids. The next thing that I want to ask you guys about is a skills audit, a personal skills audit. So you've determined what makes you happy. Next, determine what your skills are. And this is hard. Sometimes this can be hard because you have to look at it, not what you think your skills are, but what your skills truly are, what other people say your strengths are. Identify unique talents that you can bring to the team. Don't just think about what you think you're good at. Oh, I'm an engineer, I'm good at math. Well, what do other people tell you that you're good at? Are you good at communicating to people? And understand that your roles change. Sometimes your skills may also need to. I'm going to tell a story on myself. Sometimes people are going to tell you what you're good at. For me, it happened when I'd been with the cabinet 3 years, and you're part of a project team. Worked with several of the engineers, even my supervisor. We'd get ready for a public meeting, and they would come and ask me, read this and tell me what you think. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. They're asking my opinion. I'm officially part of the team now. So we did it, and this went on several times. Still, honestly, it still goes on. But finally, I was like, okay, I like it. I'm part of the team. I'm providing some information to them. Come to find out, they liked my opinion, but what they really liked was how I said things. So it wasn't my opinion that they were after, but it was more how that information they were providing could be relayed to the general public. So, ate a piece of humble pie, started thinking about it, like, okay, maybe it's not what I thought they were after, but it's still a good skill to have. In a world filled with technical people, where we have to go relay information, sometimes very technical jargon, sometimes a lot of acronyms, to the public, who's the ultimate end user, I'll be a translator anytime. So yeah, like I said, sometimes you're told what your skills are, other times you figure it out. Like with that, in that situation, if you identify it or not, sometimes you're going to get exploited, right? So identify it and embrace it before they exploit you. The next thing to take into consideration is you've taken your initiative, you've figured out meaning, you've made it personal. Now you need to develop a plan, because all of this isn't going to really do anyone any good, including yourself, if you don't take that and develop an action plan and take it to you. I put it here at the bottom, but one of the main things you're going to need to do is communicate. We know that in everything that we do within our cabinet, in our personal lives. Communicate what your desires are. But start by focusing on enhancing your skills and improving your weaknesses. Match your skills to your department's needs and problems. Volunteer for projects and teams. Connect with other departments. If possible, if you're struggling and you're not finding yourself motivated, look for an opportunity to maybe cross-train. Maybe you'll find something there that will keep your interest, because the last thing that we want is for anyone to come to work and not be motivated. And then communicate with your management. I recommend to do that early, do it often, and do it frequent. For an example, in District 6, there was a group of us that all came in about the same time. Young engineers, myself, just the whole design team. And so there was a group of them that had pretty much the same skill set. One of the gentlemen wanted to set himself apart and kind of did this inventory of skills, but not only his, but also what the cabinet needs at the time. It was identified that we needed a drainage engineer. And God love him, that is not a skill set that I would like to develop, but he did. He took it upon himself to become our district drainage engineer. I don't know how he made it, but made it through several drainage, made it through the drainage manual, found himself not being involved in as much just his one. The problem was that he was getting it was becoming a little repetitive with his, 2-3 projects that he had, the same, all designed over and over and over again. By becoming the drainage engineer for our district, he got his hands in all of our projects. Any project that needed drainage, he was able to work on that. And that, for him, was the change of pace that he needed. So he was able to, his skill was being able to take the technical and figure it out. We didn't have, took what training he could, but there was no one in the district that could teach him. So he taught himself, but more importantly, he defined and realized the department's needs at that time. And before he did that, it had probably been 5 or 6 years since we'd had a district drainage engineer, and he has actually developed his skills so well, but he's no longer with us, and has been gone probably 3 years now, and we still don't, we don't have another replacement. We still don't have anyone that's taken on that responsibility. So, taking that initiative, taking that leadership within himself, that personal leadership, he was able to find his own niche. So, defining tangible results. So I think it's always important to figure out a way to measure results. And then the last one is diffuse negative energy. And when I started actually talking about keen, when I first started and I went to my supervisor and said what I wanted to do, the first comment was, well, you're not an engineer. And half-heartedly, he's joking. I mean, anything's going to come out of his mouth. So it was easy to address. He's just like, it was fun. But you got to be able to address that negative energy and, more importantly, diffuse it. Okay, so now you have your plan. And you know what you want to do, and you relay that information to your supervisor. But the next step, and in some situations what I consider the hardest, is being committed to that plan. Being committed to your plan, but also being flexible enough to change if necessary. Following through. We all have grandiose ideas, and we are all, ready to take on the world. We're all going to be like that after this conference, right? We're ready to go out and make a difference. But the important part is making that commitment and keeping it. Learning, self-improvement. Effective leaders concentrate on managing themselves as much as others. Learn from your mistakes. I've been fortunate enough to where, like I said, that group that came in with us, even some that have left the cabinet, I feel like I have a pretty good core group that I can bounce ideas off of. Pretty safe group, because they're ones that they're going to tell me if my idea is stupid, it's stupid, Ask others how they would have handled that situation, but also trust their judgment. So surround yourself with people that you trust and go to them, bounce ideas off of them. Earlier, we talked about one of my previous supervisors / leaders. He's one that I will use in the context both ways. We had a 2 o'clock brainstorming session. It's when we were all new, still trying to learn. We'd go out and he'd walk in the hallway, once again, Cube Farms. All right, 2 o'clock, everyone up. And this wasn't an everyday thing, but it was, enough to where we would talk about what was stumping us. What obstacle had we hit? And he would joke, if we're not going to talk about it, he's going to go get a Mountain Dew. So it's one or the other. It's like that 2 o'clock afternoon lull. But for me, that helped create an environment where I was comfortable asking, how would you have handled it differently? This is where I'm at. What can I do better? So make a commitment to your plan. Make that commitment to improving yourself and becoming a leader. Seek out opportunities for improvement and training, and then always be on the lookout for ways to increase your value. Sometimes it falls in your lap. Sometimes you've been working on a component of a project in one role, and when people leave, that opportunity provides itself to where you slide into others, but make sure you're prepared for it. And then the last part that I want to talk about is teaching, because we've committed to improving ourselves, we've committed to lifelong learning, we've committed to essentially becoming a leader. And I think it's important that once you get there, turn around and help those behind you. Share what you've learned with others, develop alliances. That kind of gets back with the group I was talking about, people that you trust and people that you can share your ideas with. But focus on, ways to continue to cultivate them as well as yourself. And invest in other people, because when they win, you win. That's not always a good, an easy task to do, especially in our cabinet where it seems like the thought is out there that the people that you're helping today are the ones that you're going to be competing with tomorrow, for the next role, for the next opening. But a good leader does not fear the strength of those around them. Instead, they utilize them to help themselves. Earlier this month, my girls and I, we were in Indianapolis. For those of you who don't know, the NCAA Division basketball, the women's, they actually did a Division I, Division II, Division III combined, much like they did the men several years ago. And this was in honor of a celebration of the 35 years that women's basketball has been a sanctioned sport. So it's a pretty big deal. It's pretty, it's a neat, Indianapolis is a neat environment. While we were there, we took the opportunity to go to the Hall of Champions. NCAA Hall of Champions has all the sports, everything from rowing, swimming, but they had a whole wall dedicated to women's basketball. And if anyone knows women's basketball, my assumption, if they had a timeline of milestones and quotes from significant people along the way, I assumed, Pat Summitt's name's gonna be all over it, right? I mean, she's been around basketball. She was one of the original trailblazers. Her quote, her name was only on there one time, which surprised me and amazed me. But over the years, for a lady who has hundreds of accolades, hundreds of awards herself, the quote and the comment that she was the most proud of actually goes towards the tremendous productivity of her student athletes. And while she was coaching, she had a 100% graduation rate for all the lady volunteers who completed their eligibility at Tennessee. To me, that's an amazing accomplishment. It only makes this quote more important. Because by most accounts, she's right up there. Top-notch coach. And what she says is, it's not what you learn after you know it all, because it's presumably she knows it all, that counts the most. However, even that doesn't count for anything if you don't pass it on. So once you get to the top, turn around and pass it on. Include those around you. That's what a leader is. So the things that we've talked about is initiative, meaning, do that personal skills assessment, action, develop your action plan, make a commitment, which I said sometimes is the hardest, and then finally turn around and teach those around you, because at the end of the day, we all want to make an impact. To me, that's what a leader is. They impact those around them, they inspire them. And Jackie Robinson even says, life isn't significant except for its impact upon other lives. Nah. For the next part, just a little video.
we all need a pep talk. The world needs to stop being boring. Yeah, boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but be good at that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. And if life is a game, are we on the same team? I mean, really, right? We're your team, and you're my team. This is nice, people. We got air coming through your nose. We got heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Rocks, boards, and glass, the fire road. Ooh, Robert Frost, but won't that really work too fast? I won't be the one that leads to awesome. Like that dude dream said, don't stop believing, unless you get stupid. Then you get ready. Drink that guy, though. Be a better man and keep going. Keep going, keep going, and keep going. We'll never do it that quick. Well, we just quit. Oh, we retired. Yeah, we retired. But before that, in high school, Wolfie quit when he didn't make the team. He will never make Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create when you make the world awesome? Nothing that can keep sitting there. That's why I'm talking to you today. This is your time. This is my time. It's our time. We can make every day better for each other. If we're all on the same team, let's start acting like it. We got work to do. We can count down the we can dance about it. We were made to be awesome. Let's get out there. I don't know everything. I'm just a kid. I do know this. Everybody please forgive the world and listen to faith. Get to it. You just did pet talk. Create something that will make the world awesome. Play ball.
Alright. So, the thought I'd like to leave you guys with is that becoming a leader, like I said, isn't something that most of us have the opportunity to fall in our laps. But instead, we must choose to positively influence those around us. And it's a choice we make every day. You know, we can be that negative person that I talked about earlier. And, or you can choose. And if you're not in a position to lead a large group right now, choose to lead a small group. Choose to put yourself in a position to inspire others around you. And that can be done regardless of your position, regardless of your place on the organizational chart, but just in your setting every day based on the decisions that you make. Now, we do have some time. I'd like to open it up for open discussion. You guys have any questions, comments, thoughts on anything that you've seen? Like I said, today it's more about personal leadership and what you need to take to get yourself in that position, hopefully impact those around you. Go ahead.
Enjoyed everything you had to say, first of all. Thank you. How do you motivate a young person who you see such potential in to be self-led?
What was it, to be what? I'm sorry?
Self-led.
To be self-led. That's a good question, and each one's going to be different. For some, it's going to be praise, but I think as was just discussed, what you see in, unfortunately, some of the younger people out there today is just a sense of entitlement. And try what we've tried, I know in our group, we've seen some of that, it's not always the case. Try to arrange a working relationship with them where they have someone that can be a mentor. You know, maybe it's not even someone, and preferably not someone in their direct chain of command, but someone who's maybe been in their role. And I think at the end of the day, they want to, you know, if you acknowledge their worth, because, you know, we talked about this earlier. In today's environment, you know, compensation is probably not going to be the way to motivate anyone. That's not an option. but find out what, try to get to know them, try to figure out what motivates them, and get them, set up a way to get them to respond to that. Expose them to that. You know, one of the conversations we had earlier was a gentleman who has been with the cabinet for years and had reached kind of what we call that lull or that dry out. One of the things he talked about that actually helped him was getting in contact. He was an office employee, and actually getting in contact with the districts and actually finding the end user. Like at the end of the day, one that validated the work that he was doing, and being able to re-establish and remake that connection helped provide him the worth that he needed to get him kind of re-energized, re-inspired, re-motivated. So in that situation, find out what it takes to get them to that level. I wish there was an easy answer, because I'm sure you're not the only one dealing with that.
Thank you.
I think part of it, Ben and I were talking at lunch, and part of it is sometimes people aren't sitting where they feel like they have a sense of purpose, where they're plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily that person is a bad person. It's just finding the right place where they need to be, or helping them understand how they're connected, why what they're doing or need to do matters. And so it's figuring out how to get that good fit. So.
Great point. Great point. I think, I want to tie in on that. Getting the right fit, but more importantly, getting the big picture. Sometimes you come in and you haven't been exposed to the cabinet in its entirety. You're put in front of a desk and you're told to do this, and you're told to do this and do this and do this. Same thing over and over and over again. And then, eventually you'll start asking questions, but until they take the initiative and figure out their role in the much bigger picture and figure out the bigger picture. At the end of the day, we are all here, for deliverables to the public. We want safe and efficient movement of people and goods. That's why we're all in this room. But understanding your specific role and then understanding how it fits into the overall role of the cabinet. Any other questions, conversation? We have a wealth of knowledge here. So like I said, I don't pretend to be by no means an expert in the field of leadership. So I would love for anyone else to speak up and relay information or experiences that they've had with other, themselves, as far as how they got motivated, or seeing that development in others around them, cultivating that per se. All right.